Hi everyone, it's December 23rd, 2025. Haven't made a video in about a month. Thought I got to make one just to keep the process going. Not too sure what to talk about, but I have a lot of ideas. I've had a lot of ideas over the past month of things I wanted to talk about, but I just never could crystallize things so well that I would try to say anything. And I'm in that boat right now. So it's sort of like, why not make a video about the fact that I can't figure out what to talk about? What should I talk about? What would be the highest priority? Things in my personal life, like I gotta do some laundry, clean my room, those kinds of things. We're not talking about that. And it's like after you deal with the personal things you got to take care of, your finances and your what you're going to eat tomorrow, then your mind rises up like how can I do things for my profession or my job to make those things better? And I know I'm off for the next 12 days, so there's really not that much to do in terms of getting ready for work when I return to work on January 5th. So now the mind rises up and it says, well, you have your kids you can think about, Patrick and Sam. And I just seen them, and they're both older than 18 years old. They got girlfriends and lives, and so there's no reason to bother with them. I have some friends I could reach out to, some family, but then it's like, where do I go from there? Should I start thinking about the bigger picture, how to renovate Christianity, how to renovate Catholicism to make it so that it's easier to go to church? What is the correct political opinions to have about everything from the budgetary policy of the United States, what to feel about Donald Trump and what's going on in Venezuela, how to feel about abortion, how to feel about gay marriage, how to feel about all that stuff. And so it's kind of a nice distillation process, I guess, to get down to the root of what should I be thinking about, and then how do I approach understanding it? And so anybody who's watched any of my videos, and not many people have, for sure, know that I guess I'm a first principle thinker. I get all the way to the root of reality. And I said to try to, answer the question about what's going on with God. And once I can square away my understanding of God, it's easier for me to move forward with what my conclusions are about a whole bunch of other things. Fundamentally, the best answer about God is to believe that there is, in fact, an all-loving God. I recommend that everyone should believe that there's an all-loving God. But God has never communicated to anyone. Through our human evolutionary process, how we came into existence from Luca 4.3 billion years ago, and of course the Big Bang before that, but this Earth with its pocket of complexity that evolved to become us. We're a pattern-seeking mammal, right? And so we're gonna, I can understand why 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago, many people would have thought that God communicates to us. That if you only live your life in just the right way, that you would get information from God, and God would reveal himself to you and would tell you things, and then you would act on those things. I don't think that's ever been true. People thought it was true. Some people lied. But I would suspect that most people were sincere. They thought God was talking to them, but they never were. He never was. She never was. So I think that you should believe in an all-loving God, but not believe in that the Bible is actually the Word of God, nor is the Quran, nor is anything. God has never communicated to us. We came into existence in this emergent reality. And we're sitting here trying to make sense of what's going on. But me, now in the year 2025, I have access to so much available evidence from the laws of physics and mathematics and brain studies and human psychology and all that to to come to really deep conclusions about, well, about exactly what we are. To say something, to get at the crest of my thinking about something, I was just telling my cousin this a few days ago at a dinner. This model of reality that we get from Christianity, that we have a fallen nature from original sin, and that only through baptism and belief in Jesus can we, wash ourselves clean of original sin, find ourselves worthy of everlasting life, the God who's been infinitely offended by our ancestors' original decision to sin, Adam's eating of the apple, whatever it was. And only by baptism and belief in Jesus can we enter into a new world where we're redeemed from that state of that fallen nature. It was a brilliant answer to the nature of reality. 1,000 years ago, I can see why many, many people believe this, because it said so in the Bible, and it was a really nice way to answer the mysteries of life around us. I don't think that it's true at all, but it's approximately true. Listen to me. I think it's approximately true because what we really are is we're a product of evolutionary development. And so whatever led to our survival is good. And some of the things that have led to our survival through, I have 66 male father ancestors going back 2,000 years. You know what I mean? And so my father's father, whose father had a father, who had a father, who had a father, who had a father, who had a father. If I go back 66 fathers, I'm in the year 0 AD. I'm in the year where my German ancestors probably fought the Roman legions in Teterboro Forest, right? And I can keep going, hundreds, 1,000, male ancestors ago. But if 1,000 male ancestors ago, I'm not sure if I'm the same species, right? Evolved from something. Anyway, I can visualize torturing people to death. I sure can. And I think I know why those kinds of things are in our minds. It's because, I argue that, can you imagine, it's some time ago, my tribe has food and your tribe does not have food, and you think about coming to steal our food, but you're very, very careful. Maybe you don't want to do that because just how vicious we'll be to you if you try and fail. So it's like, we survived because we had this very terrible nature. But we also had a lot of beautiful things, like dancing around the campfire and our courtship rituals and our loving one another. All evil, St. Paul says that for the love of money is the root of all evil. And he has a point. He's wrong, but he has a point. And there's some aspects to what St. Paul said there is indeed true. And it's just like, I think I got Robert Nozick in Variances, The Structure of Objective World, talks about Charles Sanders Peirce, who argued, he was a Pennsylvania philosopher from like 100 years ago. And, you could, in the end, you can make anything true. You just got to create ancillary hypotheses. There's all kinds of ways you can make anything true, and you can make anything false. That doesn't mean there isn't truth at the heart of reality that we need to find and discover. Another friend of mine who's a philosophy guy, he argued about this thing called abductive reasoning, which I think was founded by Charles Sanders Peirce. The idea of looking at reality and making the best conclusions that you can. What are the axioms at the foundation of reality? Whatever axioms best account for all the things that you perceive to be true in your perception, and even indeed in your imagination. So I can see, if there's an all-loving God and we suffer like we do, then he would give us a great redeemer like Jesus, and he would resurrect him from the dead, right? So that we can, realize that death isn't the end of everything. that is logically true, but it's false because we know how the world works. The second law of thermodynamics, resurrections do not happen. People do not walk on water. If you want to heal a disease, you probably need some pretty good medicine that have been through clinical trials. It's just the way it is. And so, there's all kinds of things that have been written in the past that were filled with fantasy. Look at Homer, the Iliad, the Odyssey. Look at Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings. Wonderful stories for sure, but once again, we can see how people can just make up stuff that is false. I've written elsewhere about Jesus. I do think Jesus was really existed, and I do think that he was in a terrible cauldron where, he had to confront the reality he had to confront the reality of the Roman powers, that you can't beat them and you don't want to collaborate with them. And so what do you do? You're in a really tough spot there. And so he found a transcendent third way out of his problems, death, and using his death to create a religion that would challenge the Roman Empire, its foundation. It seems pretty brilliant. It's probably what he really was trying to do. Or he was foolish and he died, and some people used his death in a pretty brilliant way. We'll never know. We don't know. We can't know. But you have to look at it clearly. So I was telling my cousin that the idea that we have a fallen nature and we are redeemed by original sin, we redeem ourselves from original sin through baptism and belief in Jesus, is approximately the same thing as what we really have to do. And what we really have to do is amplify and embrace. These are my words. Amplify and embrace the best parts of what we are, and to suppress and control the worst parts. And, having a religious conversion and believing in Jesus is approximately the same thing as realizing the truth about what we are and recognizing that we have to fight against certain aspects of our human evolutionary development and embrace, and use the best parts of it. Our love for music, our love for dance, our courtship rituals. It's wonderful to be alive, but there are some things about us that we need to control and suppress, and we need to do that, and that is what true religion is. And all evil doesn't come from Satan, doesn't come from love of money. All evil comes from the challenge that of the recognition of the fundamental truth that all people are matter just as much as everyone else. Everyone matters just as much as everyone else, But you have to choose your sides to survive, because some people are going to make a decision that they matter more than others, or that their group matters more than others. And once that decision is made by other people, and even might be made by you and you're not realizing it, inevitably is going to cause war and conflict. And so that's where all evil comes from. And so, this constant challenge that we have of trying to decide when we're supposed to care about everyone, when we're just supposed to care about the groups that we're part of, when we're just supposed to care about ourselves, and trying to figure out a way to balance all of that. It's very difficult, very difficult. And, at the root of reality, we go all the way back to God and we say, why would God create a world like this, and why would he allow us to go through this? And I think abductive reasoning, this idea that, so long as I think I understand it right. I haven't really studied it that much. I'm not a philosopher. I'm a statistician. I have a degree in statistics. I have a degree in mathematics. So I'm not like, but I studied philosophy in college, and I love the ideas. I think you just look at it like the world from God's perspective and think about the number line, right? Think about all the numbers from negative infinity to positive infinity. Whether or not infinity is even a real concept is definitely, I think, a conversation to have. I was watching a pretty cool YouTube video about the cardinalities of infinity and about these infinities that are even higher above, you know, the power set of the power set of the power set of the natural numbers. But anyway, um, go imagine God, right? Every point on the number line, from negative infinity to positive infinity, every point on the number line, infinitely dense. There's an infinite between any two numbers that are different. There's an infinite number of numbers in between them, right? Every point on the number line is a universe as big and as complex as this one. And that God is so all-knowing, he can pay attention to everything right now. But if he touches this world, if he influences this world at all, and he's created two branches of reality, one where he has not touched it and one where he has answered a prayer. So I hold axiomatically that God is there, that God is all loving. I hold axiomatically, I can't prove any of this, that we live in an emergent universe where God is like watching it. And he only really has two choices about this world. Turn it off or let it run. You can either keep pushing time and let this reality run, or turn it off. Or there is no God at all, which every time I try to let my mind go down that line, I'm confounded. I just don't think that it's true. There has to be a God. I think there has to be a God. And I think that God is all-loving, because if God is anything other than an all-loving God, then it's like, I don't know. You know, nothing makes any sense to me anymore. He wouldn't allow for this reality to exist if he wasn't all-loving. You know what I mean? Because, you know, so many people would just have such terrible lives and just die, and that would be it. And that's like, I don't know. I think that he would definitely, at least for somebody who's had a terrible and short life in this world, that God would definitely want to make it up to them, atone for that by giving them a new reality after they die in a non-emergent universe, where God can sit down with that person and say, hey, I'm sorry about that, man. What did you think about that world? And I want you to point out to you that I was under the constraint that I couldn't, you know, change any particular feature of it. I had to let it run its course or turn it off completely. Do you think a woman just shut it off completely? But look at all the things that are happening on it. Look at all the young mothers taking care of children. Look at all the desire for life and desire for love that so many people have. Look how incredibly beautiful and complex it is. And I can't shut that world off. It's great. So it's a pretty obvious answer to theodicy, in my opinion. But anyway, you know, we at the crest of my thinking is like, you should go to church. You should go to Catholic Mass if you're Catholic, and whatever else you might be. You should be loyal to your Muslim faith. You should be loyal to your Jewish religion. You should be loyal to whatever, cult you come out of. I'm thinking about the Christian Scientists or the Muslim or the Mormons or the various other groups. You should be loyal. And I claim Roman Catholicism. I was baptized as a Roman Catholic as an infant in St. Margaret's Church, Narberth, in 1971. So as an infant, I mean, I have a piece of paper that says it. I obviously don't remember it. So I have the claim to being Catholic. And I don't think Jesus walked on water, and I don't think he was resurrected, but I'm still Catholic. Nobody can tell me otherwise. Specifically, I call myself a renovationist. I want to renovate, don't destroy. I don't want to destroy somebody's faith in God and somebody's faith in an all-loving God, and that all-loving God expressed his love for the world by giving us his one and only begotten Son. Yeah, I don't believe that. But I do think there's an all-loving God there, and that I can see why we would want there having been such a great Messiah like Jesus, because we want, believing in that as a way of telling God that we believe in you, man, that there's this all-loving God up there. But I think you can still believe in an all-loving God and not have to accept any of the nonsense that we get from the New Testament. It's not to mean that there's many things in the Bible that we need to embrace. Like I mean, it's go big on this. Go big. As much as we can, we need to embrace the idea. As much as we can, we need to embrace the idea that everyone matters just as much as everyone else. And try to fight against the idea that we need to group up to survive and we need to fight back against the other people. And that is true. We need to do that because if other people group up and say, hey, we're more important than everyone else, that's inevitably going to lead to conflict. And that's just the way it is. And until everybody decides to renounce violence, then violence is necessary. I guess Vladimir Putin, if anybody, teaches us that clearly. So, it's like go big. There's a thing in the Bible I remember, don't shake the tree. I don't know where it is in the Old Testament. I don't care to look for it, but I know it's there somewhere. The idea is like when you go harvest the apples at the orchard, right? You don't shake the tree to make more apples fall to make sure you get those extra apples. Now collect what you can reach and collect what's on the ground. Go to the next tree. Don't shake the tree for more stuff because you leave that up there for the poor people. After you're done harvesting, they can come and shake the tree and get what's left. And so the poor, the widows, the orphans, the hungry, they'll have something for themselves, right? And so I think anybody, throughout history that would read the Old Testament, the New Testament, and they would see this fantastic bullshit that's in it, but they would also see things in it that they would read things in it that were like, God, that just makes so much sense. And that's where I was like, go big. Recognize why the Bible has had such a hold on humanity for so long. It's because there are true things in it. And I remember trying to renovate the book of Revelation, 1998, 27 years ago. The idea of the book of Revelation. The seven seals, I know what they are. The seven seals are debt. I mean, debt is a very spiritual thing. If you owe money to someone over there, it's a very spiritual bind on you. Oaths, the second seal. Debt is the first seal. Oaths is the second seal. Because, when you take an oath, you have to follow it forever. And it's like, boy, that puts a real constraint on what you're going to do with your life. So debt, whether it's oaths to the U.S. Constitution, to a marriage, to a fraternity, sorority, to a Freemason guild, to whatever your oath is to, it puts a constraint on your life. But these are deeply spiritual things, to be in debt to someone, to have oaths that you have taken, debt oaths, ownership. I own this, you don't own this. That's a very spiritual thing. Contracts, you got to follow through on that contract. Laws themselves is the very imprint of the law. You could sit there stupidly waiting for the red light to turn green. There's no cars for as far as the eye can see, but you wait until the green light comes before you go, Prisons and weapons. I mean, to be a prisoner, you have committed crime and it's a very spiritual thing. Weapons. When you have an instrument here in front of you. When you're talking to somebody else and you have a gun in your waistband or a weapon in your waistband, it's very spiritual. To free ourselves from those seven things. The only one who is worthy to free us from is the Lamb, is the Messiah. So it's like, what am I saying? I'm saying that in 2033, Along between now and 2033, we should rewrite the American Constitution and create universal basic income. It's like, where'd that come from? But I mean, no, piece it together. I mean, what's on the American Liberty Bell? The Liberty Bell is Leviticus 25:10, the blowing of the ram's horn every 50 years. You're supposed to have a big jubilee. This is Moses' big conception. I don't think Moses got that from God. He might think he did, but he was just brilliant. The idea that you got to let ordinary life continue, and richer people are going to get richer because they're focused on money, and poor people are going to get poorer because they're focused on service for others or gambling or whatever it is that they're focused on. And then there's certain rich people that get rich knowing how to manipulate the poor to be even poorer. But there's some people who are rich because they made really good decisions. There's some people who are poor because they had to take care of mom, or they had to do things that were hard. And it's confounded. It's very hard. Confounded means you just don't know what's causing it. It could be this, it could be that, it could be something else. But every 50 years, you're supposed to have a jubilee, so that no matter what, when all the pet wealth and power is concentrated in certain people, and lack of wealth and power for everyone else, you redistribute. And it sounds like communism, but it isn't, because it's a 1-year process of equalizing things at some level, and then you just continue. Then ordinary debt, and the rich are going to go become rich again, and the poor are going to go poor again, until you wait for the next jubilee 50 years later. And every 50 years, so that's my belief, is that Jesus was this young king who was in exile because of the Romans, but he was trying to enforce the Jubilee year law on his people. He was trying to tell people that, there's all these rules that you're following, but you're not following this one rule, the Jubilee year rule. And he died in 33 AD, so every 50 years you're supposed to have one, so there'd be perfect time for one in 2033, right? And of course, the Catholic Church will have a big, extraordinary jubilee that year. I remember going through the big jubilee they had in the year 2000. And I know the year we just had was a jubilee year, because every 7 years, then there's going to be another jubilee year in 2032, leading into the great jubilee of 2033, because that would be the 50-year, boy, I wish I was Pope. Boy, I wish I was Pope. During 2033, I would free everyone from their oaths, and I would free everyone from their debts. I would free everyone from, these spiritual things that bind them, as much as you can. But you see, we have the information technology to do a lot of things. Universal basic income. It's like the Great Reset, like universal basic income. Give everybody $30 a day, but you do it slowly. You give everyone 1 penny and wait and see how that affects things. And then after a certain amount of time, you give everyone $1 every day and just see how that changes things. If you give everyone $500 a day, it would destroy the world. It would just, like, money would become so ridiculously worthless, and everything would fall apart, and would just create chaos, and it would destroy our system. If you gave everyone 1 penny a year, it would make no difference at all. So somewhere in between, I'm arguing that slowly but surely you build up to about $30 a day. And you see, with true freedom requires some prosperity. True freedom requires some wealth. Look, the sunlight hit the planet Earth, and all the apple trees grew, and everyone deserves a piece of that. You know what I mean? It's like, just because you exist, you deserve a piece of that. And that's what we should do. And I think that's the fulfillment of the Bible. The Bible was never the word of God from the beginning, but there's a reason why it held on for so long, holding itself up as the ultimate source of truth. It was not the ultimate source of truth, but it contained many things that were ultimately very true, And so, you got to think about that. So, so with the crest of my thinking, I don't know if I ever said it clearly. Let's try to say one at the crest, like at the outer edge of my thinking. I don't have any, it's hard for me to figure out how to get any deeper than this idea. is the idea that the old Christian idea that we have this fallen nature, that only by baptism and belief in Jesus can we be redeemed and made holy in the sight of God and reach everlasting life. None of that's true, but it's approximately what is true, which is our need to amplify and embrace the best parts of what we are and suppress and control the worst parts. And we know what we are when we really think about the evolutionary process that brought us to this moment. This tribe beats that tribe in war, kills all the men and rapes all the women, is a very, very effective reproduction strategy. God, that's horrible. So this kind of idea is in us, the idea to do things that are just horrific, and then we have to beat that. We have to see our nature for what it is, what's selected, what's been selected for by our evolutionary development. And we need to control and suppress those worst parts and embrace and amplify the best parts. And I think the future can be wonderful and beautiful. So, I'm not done talking. I want to keep talking because it's like, you create that foundation. So it's like, what do I really think about abortion? As I think that abortion should be legal. Because I understand the nature of God so clearly, and I know that God, looking at this world, He knows that some abortions need to happen, and some abortions are wrong, and that's it. So abortion just should be legal, and it's the free will decision making of a woman and their doctor, and that's it. That's the appropriate attitude that we should have about abortion. Some abortions will happen that are wrong, and many will happen that are right, and some will happen that are right, but it just and some could be such a confusing decision and difficult decision that even God Himself would look down upon that. I don't even know how to feel about that, which is interesting. Can God create a world where He doesn't know what the future is? And the answer is obviously yes, because if you say He can't create that world, then He's not all powerful. So, He knows everything that can be known, but there must be some things that He doesn't know. And there must be some things, He looks at some of the things in this world that happen. He must be like, God, I'm unsure about how to feel about that. So, I was talking to somebody today about, acts of generosity or acts of, look, all categories ultimately fail. There's probably, if every human being could make a single free will decision every second of their lives that every human being's ever lived, I think I once calculated there would be 10 sectillion free will decisions that have been made by Homo sapiens since we came into existence. And every one of those decisions is its own category, was made with a person who had a particular set of genetics at a particular time of their life that would have been influenced by particular environmental factors. And those things will never be, for one person completely true for another person. There's always, there's no overlap here. So every human decision is its own category, and so it's an interesting question that God could look at any decision that a human being makes and be like, I don't know how I even feel about that decision. But God, who is outside of this creation, who never affects this creation, but is obviously observing it and loves it, because it evidently decided not to turn this world off, right? So He loves it. Or He doesn't exist at all. But I hold axiomatically that He does. I can't prove it, so I'm just going to act as if there is an all-loving God, and I think everyone should act as if there's an all-loving God. I do believe that, and that I could argue till my dying day why I believe that's true. Yeah. So who's to say God can't look at some decision that some human being has made and just be like, I don't even know how I feel about that one. Some decisions I'm sure God looks at and he says, I approve. And some decisions that human beings don't make that God looks at them and says, I disapprove. Which is an interesting question if there's even free will. But I take Lex Freeman's observation about free will. He says, I believe in free will. And I think my memory tells me what he did when he basically said he believes in free will. I don't know who he was talking to when he did, but he did like this with his fingers. He said, I believe in free will because it's observationally true. He wiggles his fingers because I have the free will to wiggle my fingers. And I see free will is true because it's observationally true. Sam Harris feels different. Other people feel differently. I don't know. There are, whether free will exists is an open question, and I think a lot might even depend upon ultimately how we define the concept of free will. But anyway, how do I feel about Israel, Palestine? How do I feel about Venezuela and some other things? I mean, Israel really, after October 7th, it was like, you gotta make sure that kind of thing never happens again. But I can't help but to think that they've gone too far. The evidence for that, I talked about in my last YouTube video that ABC News, if you're listening, by that Matt Bevan guy from Australia, it's, I want to talk about, I don't know, of all things, it's like you talk about the Nazi werewolves. These were the guys who were going to lead the resistance after him. Omar Bradley is the appointed the governor of some broad, section of Germany. General, it's 1946, and America's and the French and the British are occupying vast parts of West Germany, and the Russians occupy all parts of East Germany. And, there's these German people in the forest who are going to fight back. It's like, look at these guys. I wonder if that's what happened. It's like there's, 150 holdout Hamas fighters in tunnels. And the Israeli army was like, oh, there's another one. And they just destroyed another 50 buildings. And they just kept fighting. And they just kept fighting even though there wasn't that much fight left. There were some desperate holdouts that kept trying to fight. And it was like, okay, use that excuse to destroy another whole 50 buildings. And I'm just worried that's what happened at the end there. Because the destruction is so epically awful. At some point, don't you go, yeah. I wonder if at some point you just go, yeah, you guys still have some hostages and you still have a few people that are willing to fight. But you've been rendered completely harmless. And, we're not going to keep destroying buildings and, forever until there's just no place left to live. I just wonder if Israel just didn't go too far. I was certainly, look, I don't know. And that's where, my decision-making, it was like I'm a first principle thinker. And, go America. America decided long, long ago, 1946, Harry Truman, the United Nations Security Council, whatever it was, decided to recognize the nation of Israel, and our government has decided to support the military in Israel above all other militaries in that region, and we did so year after year after year after year after year in all of our budgets. That's what we decided to, and I'm an American, go America. And we made our decision, and that's just that. And, whether it was right or wrong, at the onset, it doesn't, ultimately in some respects, it doesn't matter. We made our decision, and I'm an American, go America. You know what I mean? And, when October 7th happened, I was horrified, and it was time for vengeance. It was time for, trying to security. It was time to make sure this kind of thing doesn't happen again. But you can't help but to wonder there was a certain spirit in the government of Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu, certain members of the military, whatever, that were like this. Some guy shoots a a 45 gun at some tank from 100 yards away, and are like, they use that as an excuse to destroy another 50 buildings. You know what I mean? And it's just, these people are living in sewage, and they can't rebuild their homes. 2.5 million people, 2.2 million people in Gaza, and it was, how many people were involved in the actual fight? Well, I mean, there were 2,000 people, I think, that were involved in the October 7th crossing, and they were backed up by many other support people, and then the argument we get from so many like Christian apologists like David Wood and whatever is that the hatred of Israel is written in the Quran, and it permeates those people, and that they're just filled with hate for Jews for religious reasons that go back thousands of years. But you talk to any good Muslim person, and they're going to be like, no, these people are just fighting for justice, because they've been treated unfairly over the past few decades. And I just don't have enough evidence. I'm confounded by it, but I'll tell you that Matt Bevin, ABC News, if you're listening, definitely left me with a feeling that Israel's military definitely went too far. What's going on in Venezuela? I don't know how to feel about that. I just fruit of the poisonous tree. I don't like Trump. I don't like him ever since he attacked Obama and his birth certificate and that fascist thing when he was a birther back in 2014, 2015. And I have two boys that are interracial with a wife who, at the time, who was foreign born. And it's like, I'm not, what? I did not like it. And he has never apologized, and I'm never going to, it's like from the very root of my experience with this guy, I did not like him. He punched me where it hurt. You know what I mean? And again, I always want to try to go in the direction of everyone matters just as much as everyone else. And that I hold that as my highest truth. I know that sometimes I have to, it's about me and mine. It's about my group. It's about Philadelphia. It's about Pennsylvania. It's about America. It's about other Irish people, other German people, because that's what I am, and I get that. You know what I mean? But I like my spirit to rise up and high enough that I want my spirit to rise up high enough that I love everyone equally, the whole world over, just like I imagine God would. There are no chosen people. That's the fundamental lie. There will never be a Messiah, and there never was one. There are no chosen people. Nobody's any more special than anyone else. But, in practical outcomes, some religions can be better than others. This has always been a fundamental point that we see with the Jewish people. Because look, they have so many Nobel Prizes. They had Einstein. They had all this, and I personally think I understand why. I wish I was Jewish. I wish I was everything. I wanted to be Amish. I wanted to be everything, but I wish I was Jewish, because I with the Jews, it's like the question, it's like what, the question for truth is so absolute. It doesn't matter what you believe to that. I mean, that's my vision of my understanding of Judaism is like question truth, whereas to be Catholic, you have to believe in the resurrection of Jesus. To be a Muslim, you have to know that Muhammad was the final prophet. Come on, man. Isn't it better to start, okay, what do you accept as true? What's the foundation? I know I exist, and I know others exist. You know what I mean? And then we start you build your nature, your understanding of reality from that. And for me, I mean, how I feel about abortion is connected to how I feel my belief in the Big Bang. and Luca, the last universal common ancestor 4.3 billion years ago on planet Earth. My understanding of chemistry, biology, and physics and math influences my ethical decision making. And you have to have a vision as broad and as deep as that. So, yeah. So in the end, I have these categories that I made for myself. And I'm a renovationist. I don't want to destroy old religious systems. I want to renovate them. And that goes for the Constitution too. I want to rewrite it. And I think we all need to go a little bit more in the direction of the truth that everyone matters just as much as everyone else, while never forgetting and never losing sight of the fact that sometimes you have to group up and you have to fight for the group that you're a part of. And I'm definitely it's pretty easy to go America because we're so tough, we're so powerful. But I don't think I'd be any different if I was from Paraguay, or if I was from Chad, or if I was from South Africa, if I was from India. Go India, go Chad, go South America, so go South Africa. But I am who I am. I'm Paul Grove from Pennsylvania. My ancestors go back to Pennsylvania to 1750. I teach at the same high school my grandfather went to. I just am who I am. And so, it's like go big, man. You should go to church. You should go to mosque. You should honor the religion of your people. But you should also honor the truth. Never for 1 second believe in these old religious systems completely. Journey for truth across the board. All of us should. And I think if you journey for truth, I do think we'll converge on a set of axioms, a set of ideas that are the greatest truth. And I think that there is a correct set of political opinions to have. I think there is a correct set of religious opinions to have. You can arrive at the correct position about everything with sufficient effort and collaboration with others and thinking about it. And, I know MAGA is evil. I know it's wrong. I don't know how anybody could be a part of that. That whole system. A person should embrace the separation of powers, not seek to diminish it. And I could go on about that one. I suppose I should, but I'll put an end to it now. That's where I am. I love you all. Peace.